Excuse me, I'm a little bit of a cold, but it's not corona, don't worry. But it is a little bit scary getting back together. I've been in self-isolation for quite a while, very concerned with this social situation and its effects. But anyway, we push on. So when I got the invitation to come to Gyeongju to speak about the smart tourism and related issues, I immediately thought back to a memory I had, my first trip to Gyeongju, which was back in the early actually probably mid-1980s. Okay? So the presentation name, it says Memories of Gyeongju. And from this idea of a memory, I want to move into sort of talking about, of course, a memory infers the notion of time. And so how do we look back at things as they might have been, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago, and what has changed? In tourism, a lot of people like to talk about, and the idea of destination image is basically two-part. One is the creation or the projection or the promotion of an image, and one is the experience or the perception of the image. Okay, so that's a little dualism about this idea of image. So the idea of image also has a lot to do with time, because before you visit a country, you are imagining what might happen. During your experience, you are visualizing and experiencing, and after the experience, you are remembering. So I thought about being in Gyeongju, and these two things kind of hit me. First of all, the convergence of my memories, personal memories, and the convergence of those memories with the notion of image. Okay? So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my memory before moving on to other things. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember before the end of the Cold War. Okay, so most of us kind of conceptualize the Cold War as ending in about 1989 or 1990. Okay, so I don't know how many of you were at an age where you could appreciate in real time that sort of a social conversion. But my first visit to Gyeongju was back in, I think, about 1989 or 1990, and that was right at the end of the Cold War. And I had two experiences in Korea, let's say in Korea. The first experience, of course, was coming to Seoul, and of course at that time there was no Incheon International Airport, so we all arrived to the Gimpo International Airport. And I remember traveling around Seoul a little bit by myself as a backpacker, and you got to think about the time. At that time, there are no mobile devices, there's no internet. Even making an international phone call is a very expensive and difficult process. So what we'd usually have as young travelers, we'd have a book, and that book would be called The Lonely Planet, or Moon Publications, or whatever. So that one book would tell you everything you needed to know about your experience in a particular country, even a country that you never visited before. So I had my Lonely Planet book, and I was moving around Seoul, and my experience, okay, and this is just barely post-Olympics, and the atmosphere and the feeling in Seoul was not hospitable, okay, frankly speaking. So we're talking about destination image, that aspect of experience. Not an hospitable experience. Rather, I remember on several occasions hearing older men shouting, "Yankee, go home." And again, if you're not at that age, you have no idea what that means. But that was a symptom or an effect of the stresses and pressures of the war, and all the way up to this presence of American forces in Korea. But I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea that social context. So I simply felt a little bit scared and a little bit concerned and not feeling like I'm having a very good experience. So I said to myself I should travel outward to somewhere else. So my trusty Lonely Planet guidebook, I look around and I find this place called Gyeongju, and they have this very nice sort of presentation. So think about that. That's all the information you have. Okay, we've been talking today about big data, about smart tourism. Okay, so what's the opposite of smart tourism? Dumb tourism? Stupid tourism? Okay, I don't know, but maybe a little bit less informed, right? That's all we have. Also, no KTX and none of this kind of stuff. So anyway, I took the risk and I traveled down to Gyeongju, and I experienced something totally different. Of course, you must remember, I'm an older guy now, but I was in my 20s, and I met some young guys also in their 20s. Excuse my voice. And they said, you know, we had a big language barrier. I couldn't speak Korean, they couldn't really speak English. But somehow I got the idea that what they wanted was to take me, I don't know if any of you have ever seen these old Hyundai cars, but they said, we want to take you in the car and take you around Gyeongju. Okay? Would you go with somebody today and get in their car and drive around Gyeongju for free? Okay, I don't know. So that's an intangible aspect of this destination image. The natural hospitality or hostility of residents and the social context. So that's this intangible side of the conversation. The tangible side is, what did we go look at? And if you look up here, you see Mogoksa Temple, you see the observatory, you see like old these old Hanok houses and these souvenir stands. All these things are just the same today. 30 years later, there hasn't been a change in these tangible cultural assets. Okay, let's say call them assets. Okay, so you can come to Gyeongju today, and you can see those exact same things almost exactly as they existed 30 years ago. So that's an amazing thing, and that tells us a lot about the preservation of heritage and the quality of that preservation. But what's a little bit more difficult to observe or to appreciate or to think critically about is that effect of time on the quality of experience presented to the traveler by residents rather than by the forces of commodification or commoditization. Okay? So it's a little bit of a curious thing. So let's kind of put that aside for just a minute. I don't have very much time. But let's put that consideration aside for just a minute, and let's talk about those physical heritage monuments or relics or properties. Okay, so if we think about this, we can talk about UNESCO. And most of you know something about UNESCO. We're pretty rich in UNESCO properties here in Gyeongju. We have the Mogoksa Temple and Gyeongju historical sites, and a little bit further over the way there, Yangdong Village. Okay, so we have these amazing properties. But however, if you look at this bottom sentence right here, this is kind of a key question that I've asked myself a lot, and I've asked to my students and friends. Is the purpose of UNESCO to preserve our heritage or to exploit, to use it to promote tourism? Okay, what is the purpose of UNESCO? So if we come from a sort of an internet-based view on this question, the first thing we can see is a couple of things. We can see the UNESCO, I think this is, maybe I did not include, anyway, there's a UNESCO list. Can you fix that for me, please? screen. Thank you so much. Okay, let's back up just a small bit here. Okay, so anyway, lost my place a little bit. So, UNESCO World Heritage Sites. What is this website here? This website is not UNESCO's site, okay? This is probably Gyeongju's site, or yes, I think this is Gyeongju's site. So Gyeongju has taken their accomplishment in getting that recognition for the site and now using it to promote themselves as a cultural city. Is that okay to exploit a UNESCO presence online and physically for the benefits of tourism? Okay, that's the question. And my answer, before you worry too much, I'll give you a basic answer. The purpose of UNESCO is to do both. That's why it's called United Nations Education and Culture, okay? Culture and education. The purpose of it is to preserve the heritage by presenting it to all of us to enjoy. But you notice over here, an even bigger promotional tool. Before we even talk about the city's website, the biggest promotional tool, of course, is the Google search engine. Simply by searching that, you get as much information and as much access as you would through a traditional print media, such as Lonely Planet or Moon Publications or something like that. Okay, moving on, we can see, so this is the list. I'm going to kind of skip this. But again, so the question is, UNESCO and ICOMOS and other NGOs, what is the purpose they serve? To promote heritage for tourism or to protect heritage for future generations? So that's the struggle of what we call sustainability, right? How much do we get to enjoy it? And how much do we have to hold back so that others in the future, and maybe the future is only tomorrow, or the future is, 20 years from now. So again, I go back to this memory I have of being in Gyeongju. And it wasn't so much seeing these sites, physically seeing these sites. It wasn't so much that sticks with me. It's the way I saw them. And the way I saw them was through the natural hospitality of young people like me. Okay? Now, economic situation has changed in Korea, social situations have changed in Korea. Maybe our spending power is to a point where we don't depend on those basic human networks of hospitality, right? Now we can purchase the experience, and we can, in that way, bypass the difficulties of trying to communicate with strangers. Okay, we see some other presentations here. These are different websites, and what you basically see when you see heritage promotion online, you see the same sites, you actually see the identical images, okay? Favoring form over content. Now, why is it nowadays we can see the identical images on alternate websites? It's because we don't have Lonely Planet out there. We don't have photographers who are forced to create their own photographic lens, their own photographic view. All they have to do is the boss says, we need a new website, and I can sit at my desk, search Google or Naver, and click, copy, paste, whatever I want. So it seems to me over time what's going to happen is there's going to be a growing homogeneity between of the imagery we see regarding a place. Okay, so this would be a concern, speaking to information technology, this would be a concern that I would share with you. True or not, you decide going into the future. So there's a growing one-dimensionality. I can search Google and I can go to all these sites, and I basically see the same things and really probably the same narratives. Okay? So, how could we move past that? Okay, so that's the limitation of a designer. A designer only has the forms, the two-dimensional forms you put before them. Okay? What we need in addition to the sort of the designer skills or view is a bit of help from social sciences. And so in social sciences, I'll share with you this idea of visual methods or semiotics. Now, in today's world of semiotics, there is kind of becoming a convergence between what people call so-called big data or web crawling or whatever these things are, and the essential science of semiotics. There's becoming a convergence because we can go online to the greatest content analysis generator ever seen by society, which is what? Google search. You can go to Google search image, and you can see everything you need to see. And then you can sample. You can sample 10,000, you can sample 20,000, you can sample 100,000 images related to whatever your keyword search was. And then you can perform some social scientific methodology to create types. And from there, what we can do is take that flattened view that we see on commercial, and I'm sorry, but also government websites promoting tourism. Very one-dimensional view, and what we can try to do is deepen that dimensionality. So we have a lot more to work with today regarding, like I was telling you before, about destination image, about this, there's becoming a confluence of what used to be in separate conditions. The projection of an image through postcards or printed books, and the perception of images. So this is where user-created content. So a lot of these images you might see online, used to promote, used by a city or a company, could have been taken freely from user-generated content. So the vision is blurred. So how do we get past that and get to a deeper visual appreciation of stuff, of places? Okay, so I'm going to be out of time, and I don't want to waste any more of your time. But just very quickly, I'll show you maybe 2 examples or 3. The rest you can look at in the printed proceedings, right? So here is a view of Seoul. Okay, so think back to my story of 30 years ago, when I was an independent backpacker in Seoul, in this massive city. Whatever I saw didn't really mean anything because I couldn't comprehend it. It had no contextuality, right? There's no way I could contextualize that into my past experiences. Maybe too young, maybe not familiar enough with the city or whatever. But through a deeper semiotic analysis, here I get a map, a visual map, we could say, of what Seoul appears to be. Okay, I can see rivers. I see a lot of river things. In fact, what we could say is if you search all the visual data on Seoul, at least half of it is about the Han River. Now, why is that? Well, first of all, it's a significant place or passage, but also we have an historic precedent with the Hangang Renaissance and things like this. So it has been, through political purposes, been promoted in a certain way. But look at the different views, simulations, night views, kids playing on the side of the river, boats, bridges. And so we see the river in a multi-dimensional way. No image fully catches what the Han River is or the experience, but together they give us maybe more depth of experience. Okay, we could also talk about, for example, 2 key monuments, of course. We have Namdaemun and we have Gwanghwamun. Now, when we think of a monument, we think of something very fixed and substantial. Okay? Namdaemun was built in like 1394, finished in 1396, maybe. And we think of that as sort of fixed and unmoving, unless we look at it over a process of time. And you can see how it may have appeared in the past, the disastrous fire, and it's put into a box where it's hidden from sight until the completed recreation appears magically like that. Same thing with the Gwanghamun, you can see the historical transitions. So from here, it's not just about the monument being preserved, but about it being sort of reconstructed, maybe not only physically, but through narrative. We can create new stories about old places. Okay? Perhaps that's what the data suggests, perhaps not. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to skip this. This is more about typologies and how we do content analysis, and I think we can skip that. And I just want to go here to one of the last, and I'm going to wrap up. I think I'm out of time, right? Not sure? Okay, stay awake over there. That's Canadian humor. Doesn't work well here. Okay, anyway, here is another thing here. So, how many of you been to Ulleungdo or Dokdo? Maybe a lot of you have, maybe a few of you have. I've had the opportunity to go there on a number of occasions, and it's very, very interesting. There's an interesting contrast between these very closely related sets of islands. So from a semiotic perspective, if I look up on top, I see visions of Ulleungdo, and what I see is infrastructure. Infrastructure and the crowds of people they support. So you can see the speedboat you come in on, you can see trams and expensive bridges and stairways and things like that. And that lends a sort of evidence to the fact that, of course, Ulleungdo by itself economically could never create that type of economic force and level of development. On the bottom, we see Dokdo. Notice in the three photographs of Dokdo, you are not on Dokdo. Rather, you are looking at it as a thing in itself from some kind of non-ordinary view. From above to the side, at night, at day, and so on. Okay, so this is the connotative interpretation of this would be to say that the photo is the photo, but what does it mean? What's the interpretation? And we can say that perhaps this means that Dokdo is not a place in the normal sense, but it's a thing that's ours. Dokdo is ours, right? And so we can look at it from a distance and say, this represents a lot of things to us. And you can read into that what you want. One of the interesting things, I'm going to skip the DMZ as well, and I'm going to wrap up on this. Notice here you see the person is or is not on Dokdo, we don't know. But the photograph of a guy covered in beads includes text. And the text says, of course, Dokdo is Korean territory. Here we see people, again, they're not on the islands, they're probably circling the islands on a boat, but it says International Students EC Tour. So this connotates, right, it suggests the international support for Korea as Dokdo being part of Korea. And finally, we can see one here, also where it's maybe not very clear to you, but the photograph, superimposed on the photograph is the Korean flag. Okay, so this is a fictitious photo, right? It doesn't exist in nature. It's been created by confusing and combining multiple photographs. Okay, so my purpose of this presentation has not been to sort of go to a political place, although it seems to me when we talk about tourism, and especially in this new sort of information-based technology era, okay, it's very hard for us to avoid politics, economics, the environment, and all of these other different components of life. So I think that tourism needs to employ all methods possible to reach out to a more holistic view of how we're proceeding into the future and how we remember the past. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.